Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Lewis Speaks 2022, and today I want to talk to you about working in toxic and hostile work environments. Working in toxic and hostile work environments is really stressful. You come home and you just feel completely exhausted and drained. The mental gymnastics that you have to perform and the constant professional mask that you have to wear just to get through the day, it's exhausting. And this is why, for the most part, I just personally, I I just want to work remotely. I just want to work from home because it's just hard being in the office. In 2022, it's just we've seen so much. We've seen pandemics, we've seen a lot of grief, we've seen a lot of loss, and I think people are really stressed out. I think that they're overtaxed emotionally, and I think that they don't know how to process these feelings in a healthy way. So they come to work and they bring these negative emotions with them. And it really affects the team milieu. I know that I have worked in toxic work environments, and it has really put a strain on my motivation to actually continue working in such environments. It really affects the productivity and the morale of every employee. Nobody wants to show up, nobody wants to do the work because they just feel like, for one, they're not appreciated, they're not valued, they're not seen, they're not heard, they're not respected. Instead, they are oftentimes dismissed, disrespected, devalued, and they get tired of it. They get tired of it. And working within these environments is just so demoralizing. You find that your spirit is constantly drained from your body, and like I mentioned before, I've had the displeasure of working in such environments, and it's just, you always wonder what's the point, you know? Personally, I feel that being the only black employee at an agency is a hostile work environment. I think that there's a lot of covert aggression and there's a lot of bias that white coworkers are unaware of. You know, I have worked as a social worker, I've worked in a lot of predominantly white spaces. And I can tell you firsthand that that has been really hard. It has been really challenging to navigate. Oftentimes, you will have your ideas unduly challenged. You will be seen as a suspect. You will always be the recipient of heavy surveillance. And what do I mean by that? Your coworkers, your white coworkers, are always watching you, watching your every move, watching, waiting as though you're some kind of criminal. You feel as though you have done something wrong because of their constant, intense gaze. And that's also a feature of toxic work environments. Many coworkers, they try to weaponize their gaze. They try to stare you down with this fixed, intense gaze. And that's because they want to make you uncomfortable. They want to try to intimidate you. And by constantly looking at you with this intense, fixed gaze, it's a way for them to reclaim power that they feel like they've lost in other areas of their life. And it's really sad. It's really sad, this covert aggression that happens at the job. And it undermines team trust, team loyalty, and it makes you really just not want to even be there. I know, as I mentioned before, being the only black employee at work can be really hard. Really hard. People don't realize the effect that it has on the black psyche to be the only person there that looks like you, to have no representation whatsoever of your culture, of your skin tone. Just everything is just one culture, one way of being, and it's just really sad. And like I said, to be the only black person at work is a hostile work environment. How so? Well, this is how it goes. Oftentimes when people are grieving, as we as a generation are currently grieving, we're looking for comfort zones. And we are traditionally comfortable with people that look, sound, and act like us and have similar experiences. Now, if you have an agency that's predominantly white, you're going to start to notice a pattern. All the white people congregate with one another. They talk to one another. And of course, they may talk to you every now and again as a form of diversity, charity. But you start to notice that they gravitate more towards one another. And you start to feel like brother outsider. I felt like brother outsider before. Outside looking in, feeling as though my ideas, my thoughts are tolerated as opposed to celebrated and incorporated within the agency structure. You start to feel really, really just alienated. And it's an uncomfortable feeling because you don't see anybody that looks like you because, let's face it, I think within the field that I work in, social work, it's a predominantly white and woman and female dominated field. So you don't see many black men who are working within this field. And when you think about the relationship that exists, the complex relationship that exists between white women and black men, when you think of Christian Cooper and Amy Cooper, you think about the Emmett Till and the woman who basically, just was responsible for his death, you start to see there's a complex relationship there that exists where white women oftentimes, and this is not all, mind you, this is not all, but there exists a bias where white women oftentimes have demonized black men, have made them out to be suspects, have made them out to be these vile creatures, And when you add that dynamic into the workplace, you start to realize that there's a lot of bias that has not been addressed openly. No one has openly brought this to the table. They just continue business as usual. And so this is what makes it a hostile environment. The lack of just the lack of awareness. And I think at this moment in time, in 2022, people are aware. People are aware. And the opposite of being aware or awareness is ignorance. Now, a lot of people are just practicing willful ignorance, pretending as though they don't understand things, burying their head in the sand. And at this moment in time, we're just tired. I think me as a black man, I'm tired of having to educate white people, especially bigoted, low-key racist white people, on why it's problematic to have only one black employee within a sea of white faces. It's not fair. It's not fair. There's no equity there. And I'm just thinking about toxic and hostile work environments in general. The lack of diversity, the lack of representation, not seeing yourself there and your culture celebrated and brought to the table, that creates a hostility and an inner rage that's not really addressed. I think also the passive aggressiveness, you start to notice that as well within these toxic work environments. There's a lot of passive aggressive behavior, whether it be a weaponization of the CC on emails. A lot of people like to CC someone else's supervisor. And what that does is it undermines the credibility and also the position of another person. And they know that. In a way, it's like they're saying, F you, I know you can't do nothing for me, so I'm going above you. And it's just disrespectful. It's disrespectful to the chain of commands. It's disrespectful all around. And quite frankly, these environments are awful. So, how does one navigate these hard, heavy, toxic, hostile work environments? For one, you have to have a safety plan. What do you do throughout the day to keep yourself safe and to keep yourself sane? That's one. Whether it be going for a walk throughout the day, whether it be having a journal at the job where you can write things down and kind of just process your own feelings throughout the day, something that keeps you sane. You have to have a daily routine to navigate these. Also, you have to become familiar with the chain of commands in terms of how you go about filing grievances, because there's going to come a time, let's face it, there's going to come a time when you're going to have to, when the disrespect is going to be too much, and you're going to have to actually go above another person's head. You're going to have to, because you need to address that and let them know they can't disrespect you. So you have to also just try to figure out, how do you file a grievance the appropriate way. Having that information is powerful. And it makes you feel like, I don't have to take this because I have a recourse in case things get to be too much here. So knowing the chain of commands and who you file a grievance with is essential. I think also keeping a journal of certain things and keeping and documenting, for example, documenting microaggressions. If you are a Black person and you start to notice that there are so many microaggressions at the job, oftentimes when you bring this to the attention of your coworkers, they will try to racially gaslight you, make it seem as though it's all in your imagination, when that's a lie. That's a lie. You know what you know. You see exactly what's going on here, and sometimes you don't even have the terminology for it or the words to express it, but you know that this is not right. I encourage you to find the terminology for what's happening. Document days, time, so that way you have a log of when these things happen, because they want to act like, oh, what are you talking about? Can you give us an example? As though they don't know. Right? And that's just a feature of the gaslighting. And also the passive aggressiveness. Them trying to deny your reality. Trying to make it seem as though you're somehow imagining all these things. No, I'm not, Jim. On December 16th, at 2:30, this is what you said, having that log. So they know that they're on surveillance. They want to put you on surveillance, you put them on surveillance. It's essential. You have to protect yourself because you're not a victim. You do not have to be a victim of these toxic, hostile work environments. I think also being able to clear the air with coworkers is essential, but a lot of times, once again, these environments are so toxic, people cannot accept constructive feedback. So once again, when you start to notice that your environment does not accept that constructive feedback, you're going to have to find a recourse. And oftentimes, that might mean going to someone's supervisor, going above their head. It's just how it has to happen. I think also it's essential that you have a support network outside of work. Have a support network of other like-minded individuals that can actually bring you back to yourself. If you are the only Black person at your job, having a support network of other Black people and just discussing and processing your feelings, that is really helpful. That is so helpful to have that support network. And I just think that, it's 2022, as I mentioned before. A lot of people, they're not wanting to come to work. There's staffing shortages all over the world. There are people that are now doing other things for employment because they realize that they no longer have to come into the office. Because it's so daunting. It's draining. And so if you are a person that has to come into the office to do your job and to get things done, you should not go to work with a sense of dread. You shouldn't have to call out just for some reprieve. You shouldn't have to do that. And if you follow these tips, like I said, worst comes to worst also, lastly, I'll say this. If you find that you can no longer stomach the job, where it's just become unbearable, you will have to look for employment somewhere else. If you find that your grievances are not taken seriously, if you find that they're just under rug swept and basically just ignored, you're going to have to do something. You're going to have to value your time. You're going to have to value your contribution enough to actually remove yourself from this toxic environment. If you've done all the aforementioned suggestions and you find that there's just no change, things just go on business as usual, you have a recourse. You can get the hell up out of there. You don't have to stick around and deal with the toxicity. So value yourself enough to get up and remove yourself from a toxic work environment, especially if you grew up in a toxic environment when you were younger. You don't have to stay in those toxic work settings. You can do something about your situation. And I encourage you to do something about it. Don't stay where you are not appreciated. It's just that simple. We're getting too grown. We are getting too grown. We are coming too far in our development as a people to continue to tolerate disrespect, abuse, undue criticism. You don't have to do that. Not no more. You have options. And it might be uncomfortable. It might mean taking a less pay. But your peace of mind is essential because these environments can just wear on your soul. They can whittle your soul down to nothing if you stay. And so you have to, once again, for your own self-protection, you have to just be prepared to leave. So I hope this video was helpful. For those who are currently in toxic and hostile work environments, I hope that this video can be the initial step that you take, to begin considering and coming up with a plan on how to escape such environments. So I wish you a wonderful, wonderful 2022 and 2023, fast approaching. And I hope you take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Peace, y'all.